When we moved, everything seemed perfect until things started disappearing, and not just things.
My husband David and I had always dreamed of this, escaping the hustle and bustle of the city, buying an old house and breathing new life into it. Our dream came true in Havenwood, a tiny settlement lost among forests and hills, reminiscent of a picture on a postcard. The 2-story wooden house we bought was a little out of the way, surrounded by dense forest, and in need of significant repair. But that didn't scare us. It was our project, our fortress. David, my husband, could spend hours with his tools, repairing rotten boards on the porch, while I tended the garden and made the interior cozy. Our daughters, 16-year-old Emily and 8-year-old Lily, had plenty of space to play and have fun. At least, that's how it seemed at first. A couple of weeks after we moved in, I heard this story for the first time. While buying fresh bread at the local store, I overheard a conversation between 2 elderly women. They were whispering, casting anxious glances toward the forest darkening outside the window. They were talking about a witch. The legend was as old as Havenwood itself. They said that deep in the woods lived an old woman who went hunting when the moon was hidden behind the clouds. She did not touch adults. She was only interested in young girls. She lured them into her lair and stole their youth to prolong her own existence. At the time, I just smiled. Ordinary rural tales to scare children. But then, strange things began to happen. At first, it was small things. David's tool left in the yard would disappear and be found in a completely different place. The flowers I planted seemed to be trampled on at night, although the traces were barely noticeable. Then things began to disappear from the house. Lily's favorite doll, an old silver spoon, a photo of Emily from her high school graduation. We attributed it to forgetfulness and the chaos associated with moving. But somewhere deep inside, in that dark corner of the soul where primal fears live, an uneasy feeling was growing. The forest, which had previously seemed picturesque and peaceful to me, now evoked unease. Its shadows grew longer, and the silence became oppressive. Sometimes, looking out the window at night, it seemed to me that someone was standing among the trees, watching our house.
The move was hardest on Emily. She had left her friends and her familiar life behind in the city, and now she felt trapped in this wilderness. Every day turned into a battlefield. She accused us of selfishness, of ruining her life for the sake of our own fanciful dream. David tried to be patient, explaining that it was for our own good, that the air was clean and peaceful here, but his words meant nothing to her. One evening, the argument reached its climax. Emily screamed that she hated this house, this forest, that she would run away at the first opportunity. David, losing his patience, raised his voice, saying that as long as she lived under our roof, she would abide by our rules. In tears and rage, Emily ran upstairs to her room and slammed the door. An hour later, David and I, having calmed down a little, decided to go talk to her. But her room was empty. On the table, near the open window, lay a small silver cross on a chain. It was a gift from my late grandmother, a talisman she had once given to Emily. My grandmother was very religious and believed in the power of such things. "Never take it off, child," she said. "It is your only protection against the evil that the human eye cannot see." Emily always wore it, even though she was skeptical about it. The fact that she left it behind was a sign of a final break, a challenge. David and I started calling her new friends in the village, a few girls she had met, but no one had seen her. The sun began to set. painting the sky in blood red tones. The forest surrounding our house turned into a black, impenetrable wall. And then I remembered the whispers in the store, the story about the witch. A cold wave of horror ran down my spine. David tried to calm me down, saying that she was probably just out for a walk to cool off and would be back soon. But I knew, I felt with my whole being that she had gone where she shouldn't have gone, into the forest. We searched for her until late at night, calling her name until we were hoarse. The darkness in the forest was absolute, thick, as if it absorbed the light of our flashlights. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves made our hearts pound wildly, but Emily did not respond. Exhausted and broken, we returned home around 2 a.m. David assured me that we would go to the police in the morning, that everything would be fine, but his voice trembled. We looked into Lily's room. She was sleeping peacefully, hugging her teddy bear. Her calm breathing was the only source of comfort in this house, which had suddenly become strange and hostile. Without undressing, we collapsed onto the bed and almost instantly fell into a heavy, restless sleep, physically and emotionally exhausted. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up to a strange feeling of cold and an eerie creaking sound. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar. I sat up in bed. The house was deathly quiet, and suddenly I saw her. Outside the window, in Lily's room, in the pale moonlight, stood a figure. It was a witch. Long, tangled gray hair fell over her shoulders, and her face, as far as I could see, was furrowed with deep wrinkles. But the most frightening thing was her eyes. They burned in the darkness with an unhuman, hungry fire, and their gaze was fixed on my younger daughter, my little Lily. I tried to scream, but only a hoarse moan escaped my throat. I rushed to David, began to shake him, babbling something about a witch, about a window, but he was fast asleep, his body heavy and motionless, as if under some spell. Horror paralyzed my body. I looked again toward Lily's room and saw my daughter sitting up in bed. Her eyes were open but empty, glassy like a doll's. She moved smoothly but mechanically, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. She got out of bed. And then I heard that creak again, the creak of the front door. I realized that some invisible, sinister force was luring my child out of the house. She walked like a sleepwalker, controlled by the will of the creature standing outside the window. Panic broke through my numbness. I jumped out of bed and, without thinking, rushed after her. I ran out of the room, sprinted down the hallway, and saw Lily's figure disappear into the dark opening of the door leading outside to the forest. We searched for her until late at night, calling her name until we were hoarse. The darkness in the forest was absolute, thick, as if it absorbed the light. I ran out of the house without even putting on my shoes. The cold dew stung my bare feet and sharp stones dug into my skin, but I felt no pain. All my attention was focused on the small white figure that was inexorably receding, merging with the bizarre shadows of the trees. The forest, which during the day seemed just old and a little neglected, turned into a labyrinth of horror at night. Branches, like bony hands, grabbed my clothes and hair, trying to stop me. I ran, jumping over fallen trunks, pushing through thorny bushes. The air was thick and cold, filled with the smell of damp earth and rotten leaves. I didn't call out to Lily. My instinct told me that any sound would only attract the attention of whoever was following her. My only guide was her white nightgown, looming ahead like a ghostly light in the impenetrable darkness. We went deeper and deeper into the heart of the forest,
where I was sure no villager had ever set foot. The trees here were denser, their crowns completely covering the sky. It was almost completely dark. I almost lost sight of her, but suddenly a faint flicker appeared ahead. It grew brighter and brighter, spreading across the tree trunks with an otherworldly yellow light. Lily was walking straight toward the light. Summoning my last ounce of strength, I sprinted and caught up with her at the edge of a large circular clearing. I grabbed her by the shoulder, and she stopped, but did not turn around. Her body was tense and her gaze was still empty and directed forward. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the middle of the clearing, surrounded by hundreds of lit candles standing directly on the ground, sat the same witch on an old stump. Now I could see her better. Her skin was gray and dry like parchment, and her eyes were two black holes deep within which red sparks glowed. She did not move, only watched. And around her, in a strange frozen circle, stood several young girls. They were dressed in simple white dresses, their faces devoid of any emotion. And among them, directly opposite the witch, stood my Emily. My scream stuck in my throat. It was like some kind of eerie, silent ritual, a horrific performance in which my daughters were to be the main characters.
The witch slowly turned her head toward me. The movement was slow, unnatural, as if someone were turning the head of a statue rusted by time. Her black eyes fixed on me, and I felt my will begin to melt like ice under the scorching sun. She didn't smile, but I could feel her triumph, her hungry joy. She knew I was here. She was waiting for me. She wanted me to see her take my last child. Lily began to move forward slowly, breaking free from my arms with superhuman strength. I clung to her like a drowning man clinging to a straw, but her small body dragged me along with her to the clearing, to the candles, to the inevitable horror. We were a few steps away from the circle when a memory flashed through my fear-clouded mind. My mother's words, spoken so long ago that I had almost forgotten them. She was talking about her grandmother, about how she once encountered something in the forest that had no name. If evil looks you in the eye, my mother said, if you feel it taking your soul, pray. It doesn't matter if you know the words. Just talk to God. It's the only shield that darkness can't break. I didn't know where the words came from. They poured out of me in a hot, unstoppable stream. It wasn't a memorized prayer from a prayer book, but a primal cry from my soul, addressed to a power greater than the one sitting on the stump in front of me. I spoke of love for my children, of light, of protection. I begged, demanded, cried. The witch shuddered. Her face was contorted with rage and pain. She stretched out her bony, claw-like hand toward us, as if she wanted to strangle the very sounds of my prayer. But her hand froze in midair, unable to cross the invisible boundary. The candle flames flickered and stretched, as if trying to escape. Her figure began to tremble and dissolve as if woven from smoke and shadow. The candle flames went out one by one as if blown out by an invisible breath. The last thing I saw were her eyes, which flashed with pure hatred for a moment, then disappeared, swallowed up by the darkness that came in their place. There was absolute silence and darkness. The clearing disappeared. The candles, the stump, the girls in white disappeared. Everything disappeared. I was standing in the middle of an ordinary night forest. Lily suddenly went limp in my arms and began to cry, a normal, childish cry. A few steps away from us on the damp ground lay Emily. She slowly raised her head, her eyes filled with tears and horror. She was herself. I picked up Lily, helped Emily up, and we walked back, hugging each other. The road home seemed to take forever. We didn't talk. When we entered the house, David was still fast asleep. I put the girls in their beds, covered them with blankets, and sat in the chair by the window looking at the forest until dawn. The dream of a quiet life in the countryside died that night. We had found our home, but we had lost the illusion of safety. And now I knew that there were things you couldn't build a fence around, and that there was darkness that would always be waiting just beyond the threshold if you forgot about it for even a moment.